It is finally that time. Dudes, lady dudes, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got a revamped, redone, whatever, updated version of Lair of Darkness. It has been quite a minute here. This is one of the biggest deck profiles I ever have made on my channel. Actually, I think the first one I ever made on my channel, but it's one I definitely take a lot of pride in. This is one of my favorite decks ever. I always am hoping that Konami is still thinking about them. And so I finally came up with a list for the new Master Rule 5 and everything like that, the new format, Eternity Code, all that stuff, finally updated. Now, before we get into the deck profile, I want to preface this by saying one very, very important thing. Malice, Lady of Lament, is not in this deck profile. I am sorry. Malice is not good at the moment. If you want to play this deck in a more fun variant or in just like a different variant, then go for it. Play Malice, by all means. I don't think it's terrible. I just don't think it's like good in this version specifically. So, and in my opinion, this is like the best way to play the deck at the moment. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. I'm not playing Malice. So just a heads up, even though this is a post-Eternity Code deck profile, no Malice. I'm sorry, but I wanted to really stay true and like give you guys the best version that I believe I could make at the moment, and it just doesn't include her. So without further ado, let's jump into the deck profile. For the monsters, plain and simple, we've got 3 Lilith, Lady of Lament, 3 Arima, the Wicked Warden, and 1 copy of Darkest Diabolos, Lord of the Lair. Easy and simple here. So Lilith is like the most powerful card in the deck. I think Lair is the most important because it makes like so much of your stuff so much better. Arima, so versatile. It either gets you Lair, or if you don't need Lair, it's a pseudo normal summon. You're tributing your opponent's stuff to draw cards. That's always insane. You go +1, your opponent goes -1, and then Diabolos, just a one of. He's searchable off Arima. And I don't blame you if you want to play this card at more than 1. I just was really focusing on like space in the deck because it's one of those decks that like you really can't search Lilith, and you only have your 8 hard copies of Lair, so there's not a ton of searching there. So like your engine doesn't get you to Lair, but with that, I just thought like it'd be better to make sure the deck stays at 40, and so this was one of the cards I ended up cutting on like trimming the deck down to 40. So we're just not drawing like cards that aren't like the main stuff we want to see. So just focusing on consistency there. For the only other monsters we play, 1 Scythe, 1 Moral Attack. This is incredibly important. We're playing a normal trap engine because Lilith is so good, and probably one of, if not the best normal trap in the game in terms of going first power is Artifact Sanctum, getting you a Scythe, and then later in the duel Moral Attack comes up, or if you're in a grindier match or like another control matchup, sometimes you side out Scythe versus Sub-Terrors, Altergeist, Eldritch, like pure Eldritch, and you go for Moral Attack instead because he's a little better in those matchups. And then later in the duels, even when you like after you Scythe them, you may go into him with another Sanctum later on. And then the 3 Ash Blossoms. This is just, super versatile, good going first, good going second. I just really love this card in like any deck, really, because it's just good. Like, it works against everything. There's no like bad matchup for this card particularly. There are just certain decks that can extend past it. So maybe you'd call out Emancipator a potentially bad matchup, but I still think it given the right hand, it can limit their ceiling for a turn. All right, getting into our spells, we've got 3 Lair of Darkness and the 1 Terraforming. You're really just trying to see this. This card is so important. Even if you open up 2 of this, I don't care, because what it does is just so integral in how it like makes our deck so much stronger. So I'd rather see 2 of it than none of it as well. Especially since people try to like remove it at all costs because they know, depending on the deck they're playing, it just like shuts them out. Something like Salamangreat. Next up, we have 3 Extravagance, 2 Duality. This is super important for just draw power, consistency in the deck. 3 Duality just seemed like overkill to me. 3 and 2 is a good ratio, and like I said, trying to keep the deck at 40, very important to me. And yeah, these just help us dig for Lair, dig for Lilith, dig for whatever we want. More traps, whatever we want. What was I going to say? And the only thing that Duality conflicts with is Diabolos, turn 1. And Super Poly. Those are the only 2 things this conflicts with, and that's only going second, that it conflicts with Super Poly. And Extravagance, as far as stopping you from drawing, it only really conflicts with Arima. You just can't get the draw effect from Arima at the same turn, which is not the end of the world at all. It just stops you from getting a draw 1. That's all it is. But yeah, pretty good. And then the last spell we play is 3 Super Poly. This card is absolutely bananas in this deck. This deck goes right up there with zombies in terms of like the decks that abuse Super Poly better than any deck in the game, because you could be playing a deck that normally doesn't have a generic Super Poly target that they can be hit by, but that doesn't matter because you make every deck dark, and then you can Super Poly them for either Starving Venom, Triff, or Dragostapelia. So crazy. That card's insane. Cards like a Win Condition versus so many decks. And then we move to the traps. So starting off with the traps, 3 Trap Trick. You've seen this before in plenty of deck profiles from me, not just this deck. If you are playing a deck with more than 15 normal traps in it, I highly advise just play Trap Trick at 3. I understand opening 2 isn't the best thing in the world, but going first, like opening 2 means you just get to Sanctum. And if you Sanctum your opponent, it means they probably aren't even getting to touch the rest of your back row. So the other Trap Trick's probably safe and sound until your turn and beyond, and then it just helps you grind from there. So incredibly strong, just incredibly versatile, because it's as strong as the most powerful normal traps in the game, and it's as versatile as every single normal trap you're playing at more than 1 in your deck. So incredible card. And then we get to everything that makes that card like so versatile and powerful. 3 Sanctum, gotta play it. This deck just needs a really powerful option going first, and 3 Lilith plus 3 Trap Trick plus 3 of this plus our draw power makes it so going first we open this so consistently, and that's what's really important. And that's actually the only other one we play at 3. Everything else is a 2 of, which is interesting, but we're going 2 back to the front, 2 Compulsory Evacuation Device, 2 Ballista Squad, and 2 Infinite Impermanence. These are everything else I'm playing for the normal traps. Oh, sorry, whoops. 1 Metaverse as well, I almost forgot about that. So starting here, like just so powerful. Back to the front, just super important for like recursion plays. Later on in the duels, sometimes your opponent is able to push through and force out your Lilith, force her to tribute herself, or they just beat over her after she's already used her effect to tribute something else. And sometimes you just need a way to get back into monsters. So if you don't hard draw one, we don't play a ton of monsters like you saw, so we can play something like Back to the Front, which helps us get back to those. And I really am thinking about playing this at 3, but I'm not entirely sure what I would drop just yet to play this at 3. But I really think it's like amazing in this deck. You can get a Diablos back if you don't avoid a tribute something on your field, get a Rima back, not the best thing, but in terms of a grind game, you get a Rima back if you have LAIR, you tribute an opponent's monster, you draw a card. Like, it's really good. So yeah, I would definitely consider playing this at 3. 2 Compulse and 2 Ballista Squad. Ballista Squad's kind of like a card that a lot of people don't even like realize is like so good in this deck. It tributes a monster's cost to pop, target, and destroy 1 card your opponent controls. If you have LAIR up, of course, you contribute 1 of their monsters to then pop another 1 of their cards. That is an insane disruption. It's incredibly powerful. They're mainly 2 of the similar things in that they are like your main forms of like monster removal in terms of your traps. But you don't always see LAIR. You see it consistently, but not always, or your opponent was able to remove LAIR. And so in those instances, Compulse is way better than Ballista Squad. Ballista Squad is so mediocre if you don't have LAIR. So if you have LAIR, it's like the best disruption in your deck other than Sanctum. And otherwise, you want to have Compulse. That's why I'm playing 2 and 2. So you're not going all in on this, and you're seeing this more often without LAIR, or you're going all in on this, and you're just losing power that you would have from this. So it's that, and then the 2 Impermanence. This is a way to get monster negation in the deck, but also just with Super Poly and with Ash, those are like your 8 cards in the main deck that are just kind of generically great going second cards, just to help slow your opponent down. So that's why I really like that. Only 2 though, just because space. Again, I would consider playing 3 if space wasn't a problem, but it is. And then the 1 Metaverse, you can hit it off Lilith. Technically, that's the only way that via your engine you get into LAIR, but it's only a 33% chance you hit this off Lilith. So keep that in mind. But it's very good nonetheless. It's just the last copy of LAIR we're playing. So we literally play 8 copies of LAIR in our deck. So like whatever. It works. And then if you couldn't tell, that was 39 cards. The last card I play in the main deck is 1 Skill Drain. This card is just so incredibly strong. Not just now in the game, it'll always be strong, but in our deck, because all of your monsters that tribute for cost can still activate their effects. They just won't resolve if they're still in the field. So if you have LAIR, Lilith can still just tribute an opponent's monster, quick tribute. A Rima can just tribute their monster, but you won't draw. he can still tribute an opponent's monster, but they won't discard a card or won't send a card back on the top or bottom of their deck. And when Lilith's normal summon, she cuts herself down to 1,000 attack, but while she's on the field with Skill Drain makes her 2,000, negating that effect. And then she also is just like the quick tribute. So it's incredibly strong in this deck. Your deck just really does not care about like this card that much. So I really felt like this card was just like too strong not to play. At Emancipator, if they don't see Cosmic Cyclone, just really don't even play under this card. So yeah, there. Then we move to the extra deck. 40 cards, like I said, consistency, consistency, consistency. Moving to the links, 2 copies of Link Spider. This card's very, very important. I believe that the tokens need to be malleable in this deck. You need to be able to take advantage of those because you are going to give yourself tokens. Your opponent's going to prioritize removing your other threats before the tokens, and so the tokens end up sitting on your field going into your next turn a lot of the time. And so these help make your other 2 Link monsters, which are 2 Predaplant Verte Anaconda. Got the copycat because that's the best kind of proxy you can have. And I just don't have a second one. And then the 2 B-Cop from the Underworld. So this is all I play for Link monsters. You could definitely try and expand on this if you really wanted to. I would say be careful just because extravagance. If you're not playing extravagance, if you can't afford it or you just don't have it, whatever, you could definitely expand on this. You could only play 1s of these because you don't really need them in like crazy multiples if you're not playing extravagance, and go into play some nightmares, some other just generic good like Links, definitely. But yeah, he takes 2 effect monsters, so you need the Link Spiders to get the tokens to turn into effect monsters, and B-Cop needs 2 dark monsters with different names. So again, if you had 2 tokens, you could take 1 into a Link Spider, and then there would be 2 different names to get her effect. Yeah, there's not really too much to say here. Like in a mid-range game, just going Verte to like super poly your opponent, you're like always making Triff off of that effect. It's like so busted. But yeah, that's it for the Link monsters. Then we get to the rest of the extra deck, which is literally just super poly stuff. 3 copies of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, 2 copies of Predaplant Triphia Veritum, 2 copies of Predaplant Dragostapelia, 1 copy of Mud Dragon of the Swamp, and 1 copy of Salamangreat Violet Chimera. Explaining this, not too much to explain as far as these go. This is the most generically easy one to make, especially under your field spell. And it's still really solid. Triphia Veritum is easily the best one. If you make him, you're probably just going to win the duel because not only are you ripping probably 3 monsters off your opponent's board, but you are also setting up a negate summon from your opponent's extra deck, which is also incredibly, incredibly strong. Keep in mind, I've done this multiple times. When you tribute monsters from your opponent's field during their turn, or just tribute anything during your opponent's turn, they're going to get a bunch of tokens, and you can just like link the tokens off for this, or super poly the tokens off for this. And then just, you feel so good because you put 3,000 damage on the field, you wiped all their defense off the board, and now you also have a disruption as well. So it's just so strong. The Predaplant Dragostapelia, I mean, this card's mainly for Shaddoll Invoked and I guess Eldritch Invoked, because if they end Macabre like Eldritch and you have LAIR, you can just hit them for this. It's then an impermanence, a walking impermanence, like negating the Alistair next turn. Not too shabby, as well as just clearing those things. And also, even though Shaddoll Invoked isn't being played as much right now because of the new decks that just walked into the meta, I do still think it's a respectable deck, and it didn't even get hit on the ban list at all, so I do still think this is definitely relevant. And then we have Mud Dragon of the Swamp and Violet Chimera to hit generic stuff. Although Violet Chimera still, not Violet Chimera, Swamp, Mud Dragon of the Swamp is still a valuable target to have under LAIR as well. But this is mainly just for Sallies. I know Sallies are still walking around a decent bit. So this is just, if we don't have LAIR or they're able to remove LAIR, you can still just hit them with Super Poly for this. This is definitely a malleable target if you felt like you didn't really fear the matchup that much. Because one, this deck already kind of handles Salamangreats like pretty handedly. So yeah, you're just not really that scared of them. So this is definitely something droppable, and even this as well, but I kind of like it because it's almost like a 4th copy of this, so that even after an extravagance or 2, you still have a pretty good chance of having something live for Super Poly. And then we finish up with the most important cards in the deck, your Torment tokens. You gotta play them. I mean, you just gotta have tokens because your field spell is going to generate a bunch of tokens throughout the course of a game. Yeah, I mean, summing up the deck profile, I really believe this deck is a legit, like, solid deck that it just never gets the recognition it probably should. It has such busted mechanics, being able to take such strong advantage of super poly, being able to tribute your opponent's stuff for cost to then get an additional like something is just too incredibly strong. And so I just feel like this deck is definitely slept on. I believe that like this deck can top a regional at least. And it's fun. I don't know. If you like control decks, this is definitely one that has a lot of pop to it, a lot of zing. So I definitely encourage you to try it out if you're interested in decks like that. Plus, it's pretty damn cheap. I mean, other than what, Extravagance? Yeah, like literally other than Extravagance, and I think Sanctum's been going up in price. And like you don't even have to play Impermanence if you don't want to. You could play stuff like Lost Wind or whatever, you know, another card, or play more copies of Ballista Squad or Compulse or whatever. You can definitely mix around some of the cards that you're thinking about playing. And also any deck that takes advantage of like a trap trick engine, whenever the meta shifts, you can just take advantage of that by shifting the kind of normal traps, because there's a normal trap for every situation. So you can just shift, you know, which normal traps you're playing based on the meta, and then take advantage with Lilith and trap trick. So that's pretty much it for the deck profile, guys. Thank you so much for watching as always. As always as well, leave your thoughts down below on what you think of this list here. I don't think it's actually too different from my last list, but we've gone through a ton of changes since my last list, even though the list isn't like so crazy different. I did want to give you an update on it. I felt like I owed it to you guys, and I've also been like super interested in the deck again as of recently. Hopefully we get more support, something that ties like Malice into the deck potentially. I'm praying for a one more Lady of Lament, because Malice is a Lady of Lament as well as Lilith, and that would give them shared names. And then I would love a normal trap that either like adds or specials a Lady of Lament straight from the deck. That is what I would die for, absolutely die for. That would make this deck actually like legitimately good, in my opinion. So we'll see where Konami takes us, and thank you so much for watching the deck profile, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more deck profiles from me in the future, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.